Let's get this good stuff on tape. Dragging all these YouTubers who totally deserve it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Giving anybody like that any amount of time is just like, that's what they want. So best not even to mention them by name. Just,
Exactly.
You're out there in the world. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scary Stories We Tell. I am your host, Chris Dashu, and I am joined by my good friend. You've heard him here once before because him and I are exceedingly busy people, and he's got a brand that he's growing just like me. His brand is all over on the video side of things. You have heard him here before. Your friend and mine, Mike from Charm City Paranormal.
How's it going, man?
Oh, busy, but not hunting for ghosts. Talking about ghosts, not hunting for them. As you seem to be still carrying the torch over it. I mean, what else would you be doing at Charm City Paranormal? Baking cakes?
Maybe haunted cakes.
That would be amazing. Hey, I'm Mike from Charm City Paranormal. Come help bake a haunted cake with me.
Yeah, this is totally cursed, and for $49.99, I'll teach you how to bake it.
I think you've hit the nail. I think you found content here that you may need to start creating. But then you'd just be like, you would just be like ripping people off. I feel like. So if my audience has never heard you here before, though, they should totally check out the last episode that you and I did together. What could people expect to find if they head on over to your YouTube channel, Charm City Paranormal?
We've been making a ton of long form paranormal investigations, sort of like a documentary style. I like to combine cinematic elements with the found footage sort of POV style of investigating. Just real raw, natural investigating. No sensationalizing or hyping things up. Just the way it's intended to be.
Which, I mean, sounds like it wouldn't be that commonplace, but it's not, because most people aren't interested in doing what you do, which is what I feel like, for me, at least, as someone who consumes a lot of that kind of content, sets you apart, obviously, is a much more, one might say, mature approach to doing this.
Thank you.
Right?
I'll try.
You're not screaming at the ghosts.
No, because that's not how I got started. And, you know, my experience with all this stuff is started out very real. It's always been real. I mean, it's been real for the 3 years that I've been doing it now. Nothing has changed. And I don't know, I never approached it that way. Like it's exciting, but It's not that exciting to the extent that, you know, a lot of content that I feel like is out now is just strictly entertainment. Like, it's not there to present the question of life after death. It's just there to scare people. And I don't know, I kind of combine different elements of like what's entertaining, but what can also be captivating, and just try to gather real evidence and present it in a way that you want to watch it. I mean, I want to create things that I want to watch. And I don't know, there just seems to be, it's just such a large difference between super entertaining creators, a lot of cinematics, screaming cuts, things like that, and then just raw evidence, like uploaded, no editing. Here's the whole 3 hours of filming. And it's really hard to pick one or the other. So I kind of just went straight down the middle with it.
And I think it's interesting because obviously, you know, if you're, you know, and I don't know any of these YouTubers, and I'm sure you do, but, you know, obviously we're not here to drag anybody, because just because that content's not for me doesn't mean people aren't enjoying it. Doesn't mean it doesn't have value. I'm sure you would agree. But
yeah, no, I mean, it's people make what they want to make.
Right.
I don't judge anybody for what they do. It's just, for me personally, like, I want real evidence, and like, I don't want to just entertain. So, but if that's what people want to do, I'm cool, man. You're not hurting me.
I guess my question that I wonder about, because again, you know, if when you have found evidence on your investigations that you've done, it's you know, it's pretty interesting. I would say it's pretty captivating, and in a lot of ways, I would say it's pretty convincing, especially for someone like myself, who like you know, I'm always looking, but I am also have a healthy dose of skepticism, because like anything else, I think, to be honest, you kind of have to in the world of the paranormal and the supernatural. If someone on one of those kinds of shows found evidence that was incontrovertible, would they have a harder time finding people to believe them, or convincing people, or presenting that evidence because of the way that they make their content? That is something I've always wondered about, because it's kind of answering that question is almost also answering a question about your own content, right? Because why you would do the way you're doing is to be perceived in a way that when you find things, people go, yes, I believe you. So do you, I mean, I'm just curious, as a content creator, how do you feel about that kind of possible quandary or paradox one might find themselves in?
So I guess what you're trying to say is, like, if somebody were to strictly be entertaining and that's like their baseline content.
Right.
And then one day they find something that is like, it changes their beliefs. You're saying like it's harder for them to switch and present that as believable.
Well, and if they found that thing while doing that, like, could you, as someone who makes entertainment only content, be taken seriously should you actually find something to the scale of what you're finding? Because the stuff that you're finding is very convincing. I mean, the EVPs, a lot of the physical interactions, we talked about them last time. I'm sure we're going to talk about them more this time, especially the one that you had that kind of started all of this for you. Like, if you were someone who just made entertaining content, all of a sudden you had something happen, people might be like, really though? And I think it's unfortunate, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely at first, because, you know, you set a baseline for your audience of what type of content that you deliver. And if it's for a very, very long time, you know, dozens or even hundreds of those videos, that's what people expect of you. And then one day you just switch it up and you're trying to convince people that what you're finding is real. I'm sure in the beginning, it would be very hard. There'd be a lot of pushback and people, you know, it would just cause a bunch of talking amongst the community. But I don't know. I think that if somebody were consistent enough and like worked very hard to add to that credibility over a long period of time and didn't succumb to the pressures of what people were saying, and just kept putting it out there, eventually I think the narrative could change for that person. But it'd be really hard. Like you've been known as like strictly entertainment, and now you're trying to take it seriously. I don't knock anybody for wanting to do that. I think it's, you know, almost a maturity in a sense to want to take what we do seriously and push it to the next level. But yeah, it'd be really difficult.
Right.
It's a long road.
Well, and again, I think, you know, at least in my mind, if I were to embark down the path that you've gone, I think to your point, it's hard to balance both, because I think if you go too far in one direction, it's like we're saying, like you lose the possibility of being perceived in a way where what you're finding is, again, being truthfully presented. Again, real or unreal or not is not important. But I feel like if you set out at least to ride the line where you understand that people need to be entertained by this, but you have to, like you're saying, like do this in a way where it's presenting the raw evidence. I feel like that's the right way to go about it. It's just, it's strange to me how few people are doing it outside of yourself. That's surprising, isn't it? It kind of is in a way, like, yeah, because it's often one or the other. And rarely is it really, it's often more in the entertainment side of things. I mean, even the bigger name people, they're entertaining you, and that is the end goal. I don't know the goal of presenting the evidence anymore is important, because at some point you're just like, you're always going to find something again, like not to knock them, but it's weird because we as content creators often don't really talk about how these things are perceived. We think about how these things are perceived, but talking about how the things are perceived is often different, because we can understand how we believe our things are being perceived until we're blue in the face. But like even another content creator is going to perceive what one of us does very differently from ourselves. Yeah.
And I think it boils down to two things too. I mean, obviously there's hundreds of factors that, you have to think about when starting content. And I think it really, for me, it boils down to two major things with most people that I either observe in the space or just come across. I think it boils down to first impressions, which are super important, and motivation. Like, why are you starting this? Why do you want to make content? You find your niche, you grow a brand, you start pushing more content out daily, upping your ability to edit, network with people. And then over time, those motives might change. Some of these people might start out honest and genuine and just want to present raw evidence. And then something happens and it changes the motive, and they see the potential for, a lot of money, status, recognition, networking, opportunities, and it just changes the motive. So you go from presenting raw evidence to entertainment, or trying to go from entertainment to even raw evidence, because that's starting to get really big now. Paranormal is getting like bigger and bigger every year. It's crazy. Yeah. But I think it really just boils down to first impressions and what your motivation is. Like, why are you doing this? Do you want to, like, for me personally, I wanted to just present what was a very real experience for me to other people to validate that, because I had never experienced anything like that in my life. It was terrifying, and I felt crazy as shit for like the first week because I just couldn't process it. And I just kept thinking about it. And eventually I was like, all right, I'll put content out. I'll see, I'll just make this a public video. Cause I was streaming on Twitch. So a few people knew about it and it just slowly grew. And I realized there was a ton of people that believed in this stuff as hard as I do. And that was huge motivation to keep going. So like baseline for me has always been just sharing integral evidence and presenting it in a way that it doesn't lean the viewer into like a bias. So I just present it as it is. And it's like, here, you make your own decision on this. Like, I'm not saying this is or isn't this thing, but I hope that I can present it in a way that it has convinced me and will convince you the same way.
Right. So the evidence itself is convincing enough. I mean, and again, like
exactly.
You stand by the evidence you're presenting. I mean, like you said, I'm presenting it without as much bias as I can, but like you could have picked any other piece of evidence to present. This is the one you're choosing to present. So that in of itself feels like, and again, like you said, if you know what you're doing and you do, clearly, you can make sure that what you're presenting is more important, less how you're presenting it. Because to present it in a way that pairs it down to this is it, this is what it is. Take a look, make your own decision. I really respect that because it does, like you said, it's you just saying, take a look at this and you tell me what you think. I'm confident enough that you'll come to a similar conclusion that I did. And I appreciate that because that shows that you really do I didn't doubt it, but like to hear you say that out loud for me as someone in this space, that is not something that a lot of people are saying. It's like, let the evidence speak for itself. Oftentimes it's like the evidence is here and everything around it is the important thing. It's like the evidence is what's important and the evidence should be what's important, because if you're looking for this and trying to make people understand the experiences that you've had or share them, gussing it up is not going to do much. It's just going to, I mean, you can only make something as exciting as possible up until a certain point. Like hearing an EVP is only going to be as exciting as hearing an EVP. I'm not like, unless you like heard it in the moment and you reacted to it or something, like it's still just an EVP. But if it's a convincing EVP or the evidence is strong, then it doesn't matter. Like it just doesn't.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the evidence should speak for itself. And with the way that I try to present this stuff, I mean, obviously you have to adapt to the space. You have to, thumbnails, descriptions, intros, things like that. You have to do certain things to get people's attention.
Right.
But I feel like I'm trying to go about it in a way that, like, obviously I want to get your attention with like the music and the cuts and the footage, make it cinematic, captivate you in the beginning. And then you realize this is a real paranormal investigation. Like this isn't entertainment, that they're really doing this. So like, I think people will initially look at it, maybe the thumbnails or the titles or watch like the first 30 seconds and think that it's entertainment.
Right.
But then you realize like, I'm just presenting the story of a place that we went to. This is the history of it. This is what happened to us. Do with this information what you will.
Right.
It's just I try to create it in a way that is entertaining in the sense that it's visually appealing, not entertaining, like freaking out and adding sound effects and all that stuff. But like, I want it to be visually appealing to people. I want people to look at this and go, this is a ghost hunt. Like this is fucking wild. Like that's always been my goal.
Which is where I came away from the first time, 4 months ago, I watched your content. I was like, I don't understand how nobody has done this before, where you like you just said, making it look good is as important as presenting convincing evidence. And like,
absolutely,
most of the shows and most of the shows on TV, and let's not talk about other YouTubers, most of the shows on TV, that's not at all something they care about. It's boots on the ground, dudes with cameras doing this. And it's like, nobody cares about the other part of this, which is it's 2023. You can make people feel like they're there without sticking the camera on someone's face constantly. Like it doesn't have to be that to get across. These are places that need to be respected. Because I watched your Mansfield reformatory piece that you did. And you know what? Because I have one of the co-hosts of this show, Jess, lives in Akron. And when I went to visit them, we talked about going. And the next time I visit, I would like to go. But then I saw your video and I was like, there's no fucking way I'm going to this place. I mean, there's no, but that's for a lot of reasons. Namely, just it looks dangerous. I know it's probably not, right? But like,
No.
all these, right, but like all these abandoned buildings, that's what they exude. But when I was thinking about it, I was like, it can't be that dangerous because people are allowed to go there all the time. Oh wait, it's just the success of what you're doing with your footage that makes it look that way. And that is a success, because I knew you would tell me it's not dangerous, because I know it's not. Because there's no way that they would let anybody in there if it was fucking falling apart the way that it seems. But that's a testament to the quality of what you're doing, where it's you're setting me in this place with you at night and it feels intimidating. And that is not something that I feel like a lot of people are really interested in doing.
I appreciate that, man. That's the goal. It makes me happy to hear that.
Well, I like watching people make content that are taking everything into account. And it's not just, like you said, screaming and making noises and there's a spooky ghost. Like, you know, that's fine, but to what end? And with your content, it's like you've added something that is so much more on top of that, I feel like it not only sets itself apart, but it really demands your attention. Because again, it's clear to me, you know what you're doing behind a camera, even if it's not just doing the ghost stuff. The ghost stuff, I'm not going to say it's not that hard, but to give someone a camera and say, just point it in these directions while I'm standing there, you can do that. Anybody can with an iPhone. But now to go and say, I want to make something visually appealing that has the language of film in it, as a film watcher, I personally appreciate that. And clearly other people, it's resonated with them as well.
I honestly, if I'm being totally honest with you, I only kind of know what I'm doing. I want to be proud of it when I look back on it. You know, like I want to look at this 40 years from now, like, look at, 27-year-old me. Look at this dumbass making these videos. This is great. Look at this kid.
I get it. Like, it's like, I want to put my best foot forward because people can tell. Like, and anymore, like we were talking before we started recording, like time feels like it's speeding up and time's getting shorter. It's like, I don't have all day any more than anybody else does to just sit and watch shitty content. Like, I want to watch something where the person making it is giving a shit as much as I am giving a shit watching it.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Like, you want to present it in a way that it's going to keep people coming back. And I mean, I don't know, like at the end of the day, people are going to create what they want to create for their own reasons and they have their own motives. I just, for me, I just wanted to create stuff that I wanted to watch. Like, that's the kind of stuff I like to watch. And that's what really gets my attention. And there's only a handful of people in the space besides me that do it that way, that make it captivating and interesting. So I have fun with it. I kind of just live in that little bubble of Charm City and just try to make the best thing that I can.
Wow. If you haven't reached your full form yet, bro, when you get there, I mean, again, your stuff is so entertaining and so unique right now. Like, again, I watch everything that you put out because it's exactly the kind of stuff I like to watch. And they're not here by accident. I mean, Josh introduced us, but like, you're not here by accident. Like, I'm a fan of what you do. So getting to talk to you is, it's a treat for me because I am not only a fan of your content, but a content creator myself. So, I do have to ask you though, because again, Mansfield Reformatory, I feel like is one of the big ones in the United States, right? People know it who don't live in Ohio, and I think we kind of touched on it a little bit when we did our episode last time, but kind of, in that space, being there, kind of understanding the history and the not only the haunted history of the place, but also just the base history of it before it became the Haunted Reformatory, when it was just the Reformatory. Kind of how important was it for you to go to somewhere like the Mansfield Reformatory and for what you're doing, do it the kind of justice that you do the things that you do for the things that you do?
I mean, a lot of the times when I go to these places, I do very light research. So like I just kind of skim over broad details to get familiar with the space so I know what I'm walking into. And then I go and have the experience and then do my in-depth research afterwards to see if anything that happened to us coordinates with either paranormal events or if we got, just rough example, like an EVP of a name of somebody that's been dated and it is significant.
Right.
And I think that really a lot of it, I think going out in the field and experiencing things first is important to me. And then researching the in-depth history afterwards. Because I don't know, like you have this title of paranormal investigator, like the investigative part is going out and getting your hands dirty and having those experiences and then cross-referencing that with the information that's already available and then presenting that in your own words or in your own way. And I feel like integrating the investigation with the history that we find and presenting it in our own way is really what drives me to keep making the content that I make, because I'm just trying to share the stories of our experiences with these places and hope that they resonate with somebody else that has either had that experience or wants to have that kind of experience.
Right.
So yes, history is equally as important in investigating and doing it respectfully.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it should be more about sharing the experience with everybody collectively, baseline, and then just kind of researching that. Well, there it is again.
I see what you mean.
I'm losing my thought.
I actually see what you mean, because to go and research ahead of time kind of informs what you expect you're going to get.
Exactly. It's like you get a preconceived notion of the place. So then you go in with like an expectation that's already set in your brain. Whereas if you go in without a whole lot of information or history, and then you have your experiences, like who's to say that somebody or 5 other people had that same experience and you're like, oh shit, me too. And I didn't know anything about the place.
I think that's interesting, because I would feel like I wonder how is that, talking with other people that you work with or know in the space, that's atypical, right? To do the research after the fact?
No.
Really?
No.
Interesting.
No.
I'm glad to hear that then.
No, if anything, I'm sure people probably look at me and go like, what the fuck? But that's just how I like to do it. I like to go in and experience the haunt of it first.
Right.
And then learn about it, because I can't tell you how many times I've gone into places and I've had experiences, and then I do the research and it's like, holy shit, I got an EVP of this woman, or I heard this woman's name, or she like talked to us, or this
right.
man or this child or whatever. So then I don't know, I just feel like it kind of reinforces the evidence, because now in my brain, I'm able to present it in like an excited new discovery way versus, oh, I already knew this.
Right. I knew this person might be there.
Yeah. Like I feel like it presents the evidence differently that way, because I have a different mindset going into it.
And most people aren't doing that. I mean, even probably myself wouldn't do that. I would, research, but to do it that way, I think it's interesting. I think it's, again, right or wrong. I think is an important, right? Because like you said, it's kind of comes down to your personal preference on the matter. But I think it gives you more of a blind experience, which I think if you're doing what you're doing, my perception would be you'd want to have as blind of an experience as possible, to the point where you don't even, I mean, again, it's unrealistic to be like, you don't even know where you're going, but wouldn't that be the best case scenario for someone like yourself, is just to be dropped somewhere you don't even know?
Yeah.
And then just be like, go here for a day and an evening, and I'm not going to tell you shit about it. You can't ask questions. You can come to realizations or conclusions in your head based on what you're seeing, but I'm not telling you where you are. That would be like the best case scenario if we're talking about a purely blind reaction capturing of the footage. Has anyone done that? And why aren't you? Why haven't you yet? I'm kidding, but like, it's kind of a novel concept, right?
No, it is. And that's, I don't know why people don't, like, I feel like people want to get as much information about something as possible and just be like absolutely educated on it.
I mean, you don't want to seem like you're not an expert, right? I mean, look, you don't want to seem like you're not an expert, but like, to be fair,
nobody's an expert.
Right. Nobody. But to be, that's fair. How can you be an expert about things that are completely unknowable? Right.
Right. Like, it's all subjective.
But the history is knowable. That's what I was saying. Like, there's the history of the place, and then there's like the haunted history of the place. Like you said, if someone says the name Joe Bob Marshall, you can go look, and there may have been someone named Joe Bob Marshall who was there. But then what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? Right. Like,
that's the part that people should get excited about and start digging more into, and then doing their own informed research on it, versus like digging everything up first and then going in like expecting all this stuff. Because then, like, I don't know, I just feel like it changes the thought process of the investigation. Like, you're not going in excited, wondering what you're going to find. You're more or less set on like, I want to find information on this, and that. Right. What happens if you don't check all those boxes? You're like halfway through the investigation, just burnt out because nothing that you want to happen is happening, versus just being like, okay, we're going to this hospital. X amount of people passed. It was built in this year and it closed in this year. That's all we know.
Right.
And we go in, and then tons of stuff is happening, and we research later, and it's like, holy shit, all of this stuff that happened to us in the form of like paranormal, or at least what we perceive as paranormal, is like roughly documented. This is crazy. We got this person's name. This person said this.
Right.
This is where they were. This was their cell, or this was their bed. And that makes it more exciting to want to present it to people. And that's what gives, I feel like, paranormal evidence that captivating feel, because the person creating the presentation is more enthusiastic about it. And they're more excited about it because they're making discoveries on their own through their paranormal experiences, and then finding some reference of history documented about that. So like I feel like it's kind of backwards, yes, because I'm not like educating myself on the location before I go, but I'm doing a baseline research. Right. Like I'm learning a little bit, but not so much to the point that, like I said, you go in with preconceived notions, because that takes half the fun out of what we do. It's exciting to go in there and not know anything, and then just all of a sudden you make all these connections. It's like the Forest Haven video. We filmed there for 2 years before we finally had like a piece of the puzzle, and we're like, wait, all of this stuff connects. The last 2 years and 20, 30 investigations that we've done at this place, they all connect and they all tell a story. And like, we can share the story, we can make it all make sense and keep going back. And like, I just feel like that's more exciting, and that's what convinces people.
I'm completely with you. And again, it's weird to me to sit here and say, why don't more do that? And I get why. I mean, we both understand why they don't, because you don't go to the Sally house because it's not haunted and you don't know the history, right? Like, that's the problem. I went to the Sally house, and you and I both know what I was expecting to see, something along the lines of what everyone else had seen. And if I had seen something else, what would that have meant to me, right? Like, if I had seen something that no one else had ever seen there, then what? What's my read then? Did I fucking hallucinate? Am I seeing things that aren't there? And I think, to your point, it's like, what does that mean?
Right. And I mean, it becomes a more personal experience for you. And that also, depending on the way that you present that to the world, and I guess more or less the confidence that you have in what you're presenting, it becomes a new chapter of that legacy or whatever that haunted history is. I mean, like I said, nobody's an expert, and this stuff is always changing, and there's always new methods and ideas, and personal experiences are hard to share because you don't know if it's going to be just a personal experience or if it's collective and other people have experienced it too. So like, I don't know, I think just being confident in the presentation, you're able to add chapters and new chapters to these stories through your experiences, and maybe other people will experience it too.
So what thought process does go into you selecting places for investigations? Because I don't think we talked about that last time a whole lot. We talked more specifically about Forest Haven, but what drives you to make a decision about where you're going to go and spend your time? Because again, clearly, just by looking at what you're doing, you spend a lot of time there, and then you obviously spend a lot of time in post-production. So you're spending, on average, a video probably takes you 3, 4, 5, 10, 30 times longer than the video's length ends up being. I mean, it's pretty long, right? I'm assuming the amount of time you spend doing everything.
It ranges. Some weeks are 40, 50 hours.
Right.
I'd say the average video takes about 80 hours to make, but
right. And the videos are hour, 2, 3, depends, right?
It's usually between like 30 minutes to the longest video I have out right now, I think, is an hour and a half. So and that's 2 years of footage and about 800 gigs of files that got shaved down to about an hour and a half.
Which is crazy, right?
It's exhausting.
Right.
It's exhausting.
So what goes into your decision? Yeah, all this background about how long it takes to get it to the point where I would sit down or anybody would sit down and watch it. What goes into your decisions about where you're going? Because again, you're not just going to go down the road, because you're not going to spend 80 hours on just some place down the road. Or maybe you would. It depends. But what goes into those decisions when it comes to picking where you want to go?
Really, I think the initial history that I learn about places tends to fascinate me. I started out doing a lot of mental hospitals, asylums, tuberculosis hospitals, things like that. And
the places du jour in this certain part of this country, I feel like, at least East Coast stuff, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of them here on the East Coast. And initially it was just the interest in like creepy, scary shit, because I initially was going to do urbex.
Right.
So that really got me into exploring these places. And then over time, it kind of changed to more or less like it's a very subtle message in a lot of the videos. Like I've been to a lot of places, houses, prisons, hospitals, forests, but it all started with asylums. And the subtle message with a lot of those series or with a lot of those videos was more about raising awareness about mental health and just how people were treated from the early 1900s or even, late 1700s up until, modern day. So like a lot of it was, I was drawn to those stories and drawn to, I guess, human suffrage and just making people aware of it and making people aware of like, hey, this is what we used to do to people not too long ago. And yes, the topic is ghost hunting and talking to the spirits, but like I want people to be aware of the history of those places. And so a lot of it goes into like, how can I present this in a way that is not only just a ghost hunt? It's not just, trying to talk to things and get devices to go off, but how can I present this in a way that will leave an impact on you and make you think about more than just the ghost hunt? Like, what can you pull something out of the message of this place, the history or the story of this place? Like, is there some underlying current with all of this? If you've stripped the ghost hunting and the cinematics away, what are you seeing in this? Like, and it all really just points to like how like stories of how people were treated and how history has the tendency to repeat itself, just a new shade of paint. And I think if people can realize that, either just through the basic history that I explain or the more in-depth videos like Forest Haven, and correlate the evidence and just hear these stories and look at it as like just how people were treated, treat people better, be kind to each other, and enjoy the content. But look at history, look at the way that people are treated, look at how society has just kind of like backpedaled a little bit in how we treat each other. And I think the history of these places tell that story, and we see that like it wasn't that long ago. And there's just these little gaps that, we hit a gap where things are fine for a bit, and then it's right back to the next evolution of that history. And you learn that as you watch these, or at least how I try to present them. Like you see like these periods of time that it just keeps happening over and over again. So I hope that people will watch and see like that underlying message. And that's how I decide on where I want to go, because if there's something there that I feel is impactful enough to people that'll get them to pay attention, throw in the cinematics and learn color grading and audio and how to present things, but take something from it other than just the ghost hunt. So each location I feel like has that. When you listen to the history that I present and how I present it, and you just hear the stories of these prisoners or these asylum patients or the family or whatever the case may be, I want it to impact you in a way that'll make you think about it for a while. So if it's just some random location, like obviously we want to hit the bigger ones because that's how people will look at your stuff. Like they want to see people go to the Conjuring House, to the Axe House, to
the Mansfield Reformatory,
Trans Allegheny. Like, yeah, we're obviously going to go to those places, but I want to also get these like low key, almost never heard of places that have these incredible stories and this incredible history, and present that in a way that is like impactful to you beyond paranormal. It's just paranormal is kind of like that's what you see. Like that's how I get your attention with it. But I want the story to mean more than just the ghost hunt.
I don't know if anybody else is doing that.
That was a really long-winded explanation, but that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Is anybody else like, again, like that feels so uniquely people our age, really. Like mental health. I mean, mental health is a huge thing for people our age, myself included, yourself included. And like, to me, to have that be part of the content that you're making that's like this is not something anybody else I'm watching is doing, or serving as a tenet of why they're doing it, is to make sure that we are informed as to why these things happen and how they shouldn't happen again, even if, stumbling and falling is a thing that does happen. Like Absolutely. You would hope that it's this way, not down or plateauing it. And I think it's admirable to have that as part of the reason you make content, because to leave the world in a better place than we found it, I think is something that's important. And that's something I try to do as well with my content, because I wouldn't want to make content that's, I don't know, leaving the world in a worse spot. Yeah. Insufferable is a good way of putting it. Destructive, I think. I mean, again, in anymore, like when people's words have meaning to the point where people are taking them out of context and are motivated to do things by words in these day and ages, like, yeah, there's some level of responsibility needs to be accepted by content creators. And that's what you're doing. You're accepting responsibility, and you're also like allowing the audience to share in the responsibility of what you're doing, which is important. And it's not going to resonate with everybody, but the people that it does resonate with is that it's important to them.
Right. And I feel like it's gotten to the point now, like my audience knows what to expect.
Right.
And I've kind of set that standard for what type of content I'm going to deliver. And they seem to be really happy with it. They're very patient. They're very kind. I have a very kind, caring, just happy community. And I'm really proud of that.
It should be something to be, it's in this day and age, it's something to be proud of.
Yeah. And like, they're very supportive of what I do. I know it takes sometimes a little bit longer than usual to get what I make out, but they're very accepting of that and understanding. Like I feel some pressure like internally just because of how I am with myself to get more out and do more, because that's just inherently in me to just strive and push as much as I can. But like if I miss something or if I'm late, I don't deal with like a ton of backlash or like where's the video? Where's this? I can't believe this. We're not supporting you anymore. They're just like, take your time. When it's ready, we'll be ready. And I never thought I would have that. Like I always see, starting out as just like a little YouTuber with 10, 50, 100 subs, seeing these huge creators and like looking at how things are with them and their communities when they miss things. It's like 50-50. You get some that are like understanding and supportive of it. And then you get some that are freaking out and losing their minds about it. And I'm really fortunate for that. So they're very, very cool people. And it allows me to have that breathing room to constantly grow and push myself to create better and better content at a pace that I'm comfortable with.
Which I think is important because, we talk about mental health and kind of our responsibility as content creators to take that into consideration for what we're making, but also taking into consideration for ourselves, like you said. Because again, I mean, this kind of work, like a lot of things, nobody sees the back end stuff. And I'm not expecting anybody's going to. It's not like you and I are like, hey, come and sit on Twitch with me while I edit a video. Like,
yeah, for 9 hours, which I've done that before.
Right. I believe it. Just like I've sat here and done the exact same thing, editing podcasts and promoting. I mean, we've all done it. It's just like, that's not fun. Most things people do at their jobs aren't fun. It's just weird because, I have a sibling who works a job at a retail company, and I've never seen what she does for a living, but I can go and see what you do for a living pretty clearly on the internet. And it's like, it's kind of strange because in a way that amount of work that gets put into it is immediately lost when it's released. It's like, and it's done and it's out there, but like we have to internalize that amount of work because we're the only ones who can. But it's nice to have you having found an audience that understands at least a little bit of that, gives a shit about you enough to be like, all right, that's nice. Like, good.
Thank God.
Dude, for real.
I'm super fortunate because that for me, like for a long time, especially when stuff first started taking off, it definitely felt like a lot of pressure had built up all at once. And like, it wasn't a bad thing. It was definitely exciting and it was a shock to see it grow so exponentially, seemingly like it wasn't overnight, but it just felt like it was overnight. Like the last 2 years, it just come and gone like that. So it didn't feel like a long time. And then it all kind of caught up. But then I realized like these people are willing to wait for good, honest content. So that's what I'm going to give them. And it kind of goes back on what you say about like we as content creators have a responsibility to our audience and to the people that we're presenting to present things that are honest and genuine. I mean, even if it's just entertainment and not even paranormal, but just in general, just any kind of content. We have a responsibility to present honest and authentic material that is not a harm to people. Like we don't need to continue to harm people any more than they already are. So I think that building pressure of, like I said earlier, the 50-50 split of like, some communities are really cool and understanding and some aren't. I think that pressure that builds with the communities that aren't is what causes people to kind of deviate off of that path of integrity and honesty to an extent. It just becomes a numbers game. Right. It's like, we got to get as much out as possible, whatever is easy and quick and fast. And it just it degrades the whole experience. Like you stop watching as much, people watch less and less, and then it just kind of goes away. And I think if people are willing to be patient and just understand that we're humans and we can only do so much as one individual, like you don't have a team, I don't have a team, it's just me. Like I've gotten comments of people being like, your production team is crazy. And I'm like, it's just me.
I'll thank them. Pat self on back.
And we pat both shoulders, but like it's nice to have people that do understand how much goes into it. And as a result of that, I don't feel any kind of pressure to present something that is any less than what it's been.
Right. That's awesome. Because like, again, like when you think about as a content creator, because again, as consumers of things, I'd like to believe that people who consume the content are thinking about us less as entertainment robots and more as, that's a real person and they're spending their time to do this. Like it's not, I don't think a lot of content creators are honest about these kinds of things because I don't think it's like something anybody wants to talk about because you might rub somebody the wrong way.
They don't want to glamorize it.
Right. Like, because there's nothing glamorous about sitting at your computer for 10 hours and editing a video. Like,
no,
nothing. There's nothing glamorous about sitting at your computer for, a couple hours 4 times a day doing 4 different episodes of a show. Like, it's nothing glamorous about it. It's just like everybody else's job. It's just your Excel spreadsheet doesn't sing and talk. Mine does. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like ultimately, that's really what it boils down to. I feel like though, for me, the other thing I think about is, with people's time, people nowadays, they have so many options. Like it's, you're also fighting for every piece of attention too. So if you're going to be disingenuous, people can tell because there are plenty of content creators who are disingenuous, all doing the same thing. To be genuine in this day and age is more important. But I do feel as someone who consumes a lot of content that to be genuine is more important because people can tell and people want to watch genuine content because the amount of disingenuous content is like a fire hose.
Yeah. Yeah. And
the genuine people are at drip. The genuine people are dripping. The disingenuous is like constant.
Yeah, it thrives, unfortunately. And
easier to make.
Yeah, it is. It's very easy to make. And I don't know, like people catch on eventually. And they don't, I think when you initially present whatever you're making, you want to make a good first impression.
Right.
You don't want to mess around and set the baseline for your content as like negative associations. I guess if we're speaking on the sense of paranormal and like faking evidence or being entertaining, again, I personally, I don't consume that content. So like, Same. I don't care and it doesn't affect me or like my thought process and what I'm doing. It does suck because it invalidates people's experiences and it kind of makes it harder for people like me to prove this stuff or at least prove it in a way that seems convincing. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to make the same content and it's not going to stop me from presenting real evidence or what I think is real evidence. So in some sense, I just don't care and I don't see why people get worked up about it. But I also understand that these people do try to present it as real when it's not.
Right.
And people are like buying their merch and subscribing to their Patreon and like giving these people money and supporting them. And they're being willfully deceived. And it's one thing to like state yourself as an entertainer and just like, hey, this is just for fun. Like, I'm not here to like try and prove anything. I just like this topic. Cool. Like, who cares? People are going to make what they want to make. But I feel like if you're being disingenuous about what you're doing, people are going to catch on and they're not going to waste their time with it. And then you're just going to kind of burn out. But again, it's just how you present it. People are pretty good at presenting things and getting attention on the thing they're presenting. So we'll find out until later. It's too late. They grow and then they blow up and then you find out later on. It's like, damn. It's like, I don't know. He's sustained it. He's good. She's sustained it. Like they're going to keep going until they completely burn out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I mean, this industry of the paranormal and supernatural entertainment, like you said, I mean, it's growing so much and it will be, a year from now, it'll be even bigger than it is now. And there will be
look at all the celebrities that are like getting ghost hunting shows now.
I know.
On TV and getting into ghost hunting. They have millions and millions of followers, 10, 20, 50 million followers. And
I'd like to point out Demi Lovato and Kesha, neither one of their people responded to the emails I sent from a legitimate supernatural and paranormal podcast asking them to be on my show to talk with them about their genuine experiences. And I got a nary a response. So I wonder the same thing. I mean, I don't want to call them out directly, but those are the two that I emailed that I didn't get a response from. And those are the two big ones. They are legitimate, just celebrities that are now doing this and doing it, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I feel like it's one of those things that a lot of people are, it's very split down the middle between entertainment and wanting to validate experiences. And
Right.
it all goes back on what we said about like motivation and what is making you want to do this. Are you just trying to cash in on scaring people, or are you trying to validate an experience that you had and create a community of people that all share that together?
Right.
Make life a little bit easier, like be okay with the idea of death and like knowing that there is more after this, because that's kind of that's the baseline for what we do. Like we want
Right.
to prove life after death. We want to see if there's another side or more to this. So I don't know. I feel like it's very split. Like, oh, this everybody's getting into this now. Let's hop on it before it gets really big. Or hey, I'm into this too, and I want to do the same thing. Like genuine and honestly, it's just you kind of go one way or the other. There is no gray area with it.
Well, and I feel like one of those directions hurts everybody else more than it helps. Because like you said, I mean, when the people in the space that are the most visible are the ones that feel the, again, most least, but feel disingenuous, it hurts everybody who's trying to be genuine. Because it's like, well, you're in the same space as these people. And it's like, but I'm not doing that at all. Like, and that's the thing, like you are, but you aren't. Like you're going and doing paranormal investigations, but you're not doing what they're doing at even in the slightest. It's like saying, I know how to cook. It's like, well, I cook at a McDonald's in Dubuque, Iowa, or I cook at Alinea in Chicago and I have 3 Michelin stars. Yes, we're both technically cooks. Like, correct.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Like we both engage in the act of cooking, just like you and Demi Lovato engage in the act of paranormal investigation. And that is it. That is as far as the comparisons would be drawn. But that's by people who are actually spending the time to watch both. And that's the problem. It's one is allowed to make so much more noise and attract so much more attention and is advertised so heavily on Discovery Plus, it would be hard to miss it.
Yeah, I don't have any of that. So.
But you have the other thing that's much more important, which is genuine content, which cannot be manufactured. You can't see, you can fake being disingenuous. You cannot fake being genuine, not forever, at least.
No, I don't think so. And again, I got started on this because of what happened to me. There was no big check. There was no,
you didn't see the trends and we're hopping on the trends.
Yeah, I didn't, up until the experience at the asylum, I had zero involvement in paranormal. Like I had nothing, not so much as like an episode of Ghost. To this day, I have seen 1 episode of Ghost Adventures. That tells you how much like I was into the paranormal. I wasn't. I had what I was doing. So when it happened to me, it was so real and life-changing that it's like, oh wow, there's actually this massive community of people that believe in this stuff. This is cool. I want to be involved in this and add to this space in a positive way and convince people that this stuff is real.
Right.
And that's it. That was it. That was the only motivation behind it. And it just sucks to see, I don't know. I don't want to like start problems with anybody, but it just sucks to see that people can just take a ton of money and throw it at something like this, because it's not, I mean, we're talking about like afterlife stuff and mortality,
serious
and our
things.
Existence and being comfortable with the idea of leaving this physical body one day, and people are just like, oh, spooky K2, go beep, and they get paid $20,000 an episode, and it's just, I don't know, I feel like it's a slap to the face for a lot of people that do what I do, because I'm not like, I'm sure maybe I'm one of the very few people that present it the way that I do, but there are so many good paranormal investigators, researchers, historians that are in the field that don't make the same kind of content, so they're not seen as much, I guess.
They're not making YouTube, they're making other stuff.
They're making
writing
other
books,
stuff,
writing articles, doing podcasts.
There's so many of them that like they're so talented, so smart, so educated, but like they don't get the same voice as like somebody who wrote, 2 platinum selling albums and now is deciding, they woke up one day and they're like, I'm going to hunt ghosts. Wait.
They sang 2 platinum selling albums. You might be giving them even more credit than they deserve.
Yeah, maybe I'm putting it lightly, but yeah, I don't know. I want people to see this stuff and believe it.
Right.
It's real to me. I don't have any reason to fabricate or try to sensationalize what I do. And I just want to present it in a way that it convinces you the same way it convinced me all those years ago.
And I'm with you. I mean, that's the thing that, bums me out about, like I said, I mean, not like you're saying, not to call anyone out directly, but I did email Kesha's publicity team and Demi Lovato's publicity team. And I have spoken to people about their experiences before that have been willing to, and plenty of people willing to just talk about their experiences in working in the industry. So it's not like, oh, Mr. Nobody emailing Kesha and Demi Lovato, they're never going to respond to you. Actually, I was more surprised that they didn't, because people in this community tend to be rather open and willing to talk with one another. You and I don't know each other outside of the 2 times we've talked, but yet we've made time for one another on a weekend to do so. So that, in my mind, it's like I could call up some of the people I've only spoken with once or twice in this world of the paranormal supernatural and have a conversation with them like I'm old friends with them, because that's just kind of the way this industry is. In a way, everybody kind of feels kind of closely knit, even if some of the people are more successful. There's less people feeling connected at the higher end of this, I feel like, but that's intentional because they're insulated from everything else by design. But I feel like the community at large feels rather connected. And some of my closest friends are people I've met through the world of the paranormal, supernatural, and asking the questions of, is there anything else, or what comes after death? People interested in that question tend to flock together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's important to be able to connect with the people you're sharing that kind of content with. I mean, I feel like that's the point of it.
Right.
Why else are you putting, there should be no other motivation, in my opinion, to put out paranormal content and present it as real and authentic, if not to connect with other people and share experiences that can validate your own.
Right.
I mean, I can only imagine how isolating it would be if I was the only person to ever experience that thing, or you were the only person and you have no one to talk to about it, no one to show, like not one person on this planet of 8 billion people will believe you or take you serious or think what you're doing is real. That's so isolating. That would destroy anybody's mental health. They would feel insane. So to be able to validate that and connect with people and share those experiences and come together because of that, I've, like you said, I've met some of my greatest friends through this. Lifelong friends that like I would have never met otherwise, because of this. So I think it's important to present it genuine and honestly, and not just throw a bunch of money at it and a production team and just make it entertaining so you can cash in on it. I don't know, I feel like it should be taken more seriously than people take it. Like, it's not just entertainment. It shouldn't be just entertainment.
But those shows don't help, and that's kind of the sad thing. They don't, because I have watched that entire Kesha show, the run that she did, that first season probably on Discovery Plus, and I couldn't wrap my head around if she's being genuine or not. I'm sure she genuinely believes in the paranormal and the supernatural, but the show as it's presented, I can't tell if like laugh at all the weirdos looking for ghosts type thing. Because like it's easy to laugh at people that are asking the bigger questions because their eyes are filled with wonder and they're looking up at the stars. Like, I get it. We make ourselves easy targets, but like the point is to make it not that more the case by talking about how you had sex with a ghost and stuff like that. Like you're just, you know what I mean though? Like get it. You get it though. Like, I'm not trying to kink shame or throw shade at somebody, but like, that's not helping the bigger conversation here, which is what you're trying to move the needle on, which is what I'm trying to move the needle on, which is so many people are trying to move the needle on having a genuine conversation about this without someone going, well, I had sex with a ghost. And it's like, okay,
cool.
I'm sure you did.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, like, all right,
let's more views than half the community combined.
Right. And it's like that sensationalism is what people want, because the actual investigations are, I'm not going to say pedestrian, but like there's a lot of waiting and there's a lot of watching and there's a whole lot of nothing in between the things happening.
Yeah,
that's just
like
the
fishing.
truth. Yeah.
It's like fishing, man. Sometimes you go into these places and cast your line and you get a bite 2 minutes later. Sometimes you cast it and you're sitting there all day and you get this little tiny tuna, you get nothing.
Don't you want to show people that? Isn't that what you want? That's what people are always like, why are you always like, but I'll show you that, but like, you're gonna be bored out of your mind. Like, right.
But that's where I feel like the combination of the cinematics plus the POV found footage helps, because like eventually you learn, you get your own style with editing, and you start to figure out different tricks and like how to pace a story and when to put music and where to put this and that. And it becomes this like art piece, sort of, like you said, a movie.
Right.
And I think if more paranormal investigators, if any of them are listening to this and starting a YouTube channel, or, they're in the process of growing one right now, present it in a way that you can still get people's attention, but be genuine about what you're presenting. There's nothing wrong with showing real paranormal investigating. That's okay.
Right.
Even if you're just sitting in a dark room with one IR camera facing you for 10 minutes before anything happens, that's fine. You can still do that, but present it, get the initial presentation down to where you can get anyone's attention that watches it, not just ghost hunting people, film people,
right,
photographers, musicians, artists, like people who want to be entertained, exciting, captivating. Like you want to present it to a wide audience. Maybe when they get through the initial trailer or teaser, whatever, and then they see what it is, they're like, oh, they click away. They realize it's not what they wanted to watch. Or they might stay because now it's like, whoa, what is this? This is a ghost hunt?
Right.
What? And you can present it genuinely. Just be honest about what you're presenting, but you want to entertain people too. So that's what I mean by saying, like, splitting it between entertainment and genuine paranormal investigating. Don't occasionally fake stuff and then mostly do real, or mostly fake and then real, or mix the two. Entertaining, like cinematic B-roll, good music, cutting to the music, making everything make sense in the first 2 to 3 minutes to where people are hooked and they're on the story. That's entertaining.
Which I really appreciate that you do that. That's so fucking smart.
I was nervous about doing that initially in the beginning because I didn't want to present myself as somebody who was sensationalizing the content. I think just presenting it in a good, healthy combination of like good, captivating entertainment plus combined with real, or at least what you feel to be real, genuine evidence, and not presenting it in a way that's sensationalized or hyped up. I think over time, if more people kind of follow suit with that and not hang on one extreme end or the other, meaning like strictly entertainment or strictly just like uncut footage with like no edits or no passion in the creation. The more people do this, the more it will become a standard, I feel like, and then that will like set the new bar for how this content is both created and consumed, because people will see this, like, the first 2-3 minutes of captivating footage, B-roll, cinematics, music, and then they'll like get to the actual investigation or the actual history portion where the person presenting the evidence is doing like a head cam of talking about the place and what happened and paranormal experiences. And then you get this new standard for how the content is presented. And I feel like that would get more people on board over time, because you see all these people trying to be honest and present things in a way that will leave your mind open and leave you with your own, you have a process of making your own decisions. Like, I'm not here to convince you that this is real. This is what I found. This is what I think. What do you think? And that will become a new standard. And then this stuff will hopefully eventually, as generations go on, become more and more normalized. I mean, there's always going to be somebody out there that doesn't believe. There's always going to be somebody out there that doubts. Like, it's, there's just
part and parcel with this.
Yeah. It's just yin and yang. Like, you can't convince everybody, but I think it'll just really shift how outsiders look at this stuff in the same sense that, I don't know, this is probably a terrible example, but the same way that outsiders look at sports. Like, I don't feel like people are at large extremely hypercritical as an outsider of sports.
Sure.
Like, I don't watch football, but I'm not going to list 100 reasons or even a dozen reasons why I hate football or don't like football or it's stupid or I can't believe people believe in watching this. Like, I feel like a lot of outsiders that aren't heavy into the paranormal or have never had a paranormal experience and kind of look at it that way just because of the material that these bigger people present it as. Like, they see an ad on Travel Channel for one of these super popular shows and they're like, oh, here we go, another one of these.
Right.
And it kind of sets this standard for, like, we don't know if the entertaining ones are faking it, or like, do we really have to sit here and watch 4 hours of uncut one angled IR camera of this guy talking in a dark, dank room?
Right.
Like, balance it, make it entertaining and captivating, but be honest and find a way to mix the two and change how this stuff is presented to people. Why can't it be entertaining and real? Why does it have to be one or the other? Just does it? It never made sense to me. And I look at, like, I don't consume a lot of content because I don't like having a ton of external influence. Like I consume my friends' content, people that I'm interested in. I don't not consume it, but I don't consume too much of it. Like I'm not actively out seeking it out. If I come across it, I'm like, huh, what's this? And then if I'm interested, cool. Just the same way that everybody else does it. But I feel like these bigger creators and just anybody in the paranormal that has any semblance of like a name or can be recognized to some extent, like people are looking up to you and they're getting their inspiration and influence from what you're doing. And if you're, 5, 10, 15 million subs on YouTube, on TV or whatever, you're not presenting genuine content, or it's like, oh, I have to do this to get here.
Right.
That's what people are going to follow. And
that's the bigger problem, right? It's I perceive I have to do X to get Y. And it's like, well, you don't have to.
You don't have to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's like with podcast creation, right? Like there is this trend now. It's like, all right, so I want to do a podcast about The Office. Let's just go get somebody from The Office. They'll do it. And it's like, I don't know if you've listened to some of those shows, but a lot of them, there are some that are good. And I'm not going to say the ones that are good or bad, because I don't care what anybody thinks either way. And I'm not going to give my opinion because I don't listen to those shows to be entertained. I only listen to those shows to hear the level at which the people who were involved in the show are having a discourse about the thing that they are being asked to talk about. 9 times out of 10, they couldn't be fucking bothered. They're there for the money. It's like the same thing we're talking about now. It's like, what is the purpose of making the content? Is it to entertain? Is it to inform? Or is it to fill your pocket? And it feels more like a filling of the pocket, less of an entertaining or a convincing. And it's the same thing here. People have less than altruistic intentions. But this stuff is less than like, what did you think about that episode of The Office? It's like, what do you think about life after death? Like this. Right. And that's why it's always like, it's what obviously the people that are attracted to this are attracted to it in such a fervent fashion because it is a shared common human experience. But that is also why the people that take advantage of this are so attracted to it, because people are vulnerable when they're talking about something that is this serious and important to them, and their shields are immediately down.
I don't want to say that like I'm not aware of that, or I don't think that happens. I think it's crazy that I've never really thought of it that way, just because of the way that I've always intended to present this stuff to people. So like that, hearing that come out of somebody else's mouth and like really thinking about that for a second, that would make a lot of sense, because I was very vulnerable when it happened to me, and like I needed to make sense of what happened, and I didn't know where to go or who to turn to. And like for the first year, I just consumed the total opposite content that I should have been consuming before I realized like, this is not it. This is not real. They're not doing this for genuine connection and like validating people's experiences. They're just trying to get money. They just want money, and they're exploiting vulnerable people, because I was that vulnerable person at one point too. Right. And then I realized, like, as time went on and I started having my own experiences with it and getting out in the field and actually investigating more and more and more, I realized what a lot of this stuff is. And it's like, it's not what is currently being presented, in mass. Like 80% almost of all major stuff that is available, if you look at anybody with large numbers or large reach, it's not genuine, or it's just too entertaining. I mean, I'm not going to name names or specifics, but it's like, it's too good. Like you're doing something that isn't genuine. You're not presenting this in a genuine way. And that, I don't know, that kind of stressed me out, because it's like, who is being honest about this and who isn't? Like it's almost hard to tell sometimes, because some of it is presented in a way that it's like, damn, this is real. And then you fall down some rabbit hole and realize this person has been debunked like 10 times, and you're like, oh, fuck. Right. No, I wanted it to be real.
Not so real anymore.
And then it just like, it kind of sets that standard for everything that you come across afterwards. It's like you believed in that person so much, and then you find out that it wasn't totally honest. Yeah. And now everyone that you come across now, you're either going to have a bad taste in your mouth, or you're just going to assume the worst until you like spend a bunch of time on what they're presenting and then make a decision then. Like it's hard to get people out of that mental state once you've deceived them once about this. Right. It's very hard to convince people once you've lied about it. It like, you could be honest 1,000 times with this stuff, and then you lie about it once, and that 1,000 times that you were honest means absolutely nothing when it comes to people in the paranormal, because of how I feel as serious of a topic it is. It's a serious topic. Like what the hell happens to us when we die? I want answers. Like I want to feel comfortable knowing that what I'm doing is worth it, and then that when I die, it's not just going to be black and I'm just going to stop existing. Like I want to be comfortable with this transition into the next chapter. And then you've got, person A or person B over here like screaming and slamming doors, and it invalidates that experience or that discussion.
Well, and what it also does is it makes it harder for someone like yourself or myself to have a serious version of the conversation, because everybody's perception is just, screaming at the ghost, come and hit me, scratch me on the back. Calm?
Why are they so quiet? And it's like, because that's how the stuff is done.
That's how we're told to do it.
Yeah, this is how you're supposed to actually ghost hunt, and not cuss them out and scream at them and tell them what to do and treat them like circus animals. Because if this is how this stuff works, you're going to be over there one day and they're going to remember all that shit you said and did.
Yeah.
You're gonna deal with it somehow in some way.
They'll put you in that room and want you to be the one responding. All right, your punishment for 1,000 years is to go and be the ghost who has to respond to people.
Exactly. Or maybe God forbid anything happens to you that's like painful or a terrible experience before you lose your life. Like, what if you get stuck somewhere?
Right.
And like, what if you're trying to reach out to the people that are coming through to communicate with you or see if there's something there, and they're not taking your existence seriously? Then it's just like, what happens then? What happens to you? What do you do from there? And I don't know. Like, I think people need to be more open and respectful to how they present this stuff authentically, because you're going to be over there one day. Maybe not, but you're going to deal with something after this.
Right.
Do it the right way. Like, don't go exploit Bitcoin or something. No, I'm kidding, but not paranormal. Like, I don't know. I just wish people would change how they view this stuff, and like what their motivation behind creating this kind of content is. And again, like I'm not like personally affected by it. It just sucks to see that some of the motivations are negative. Like if that's what you want to do, cool, do it. I'm not saying that everybody overnight should just 100% start making Charm City Paranormal style videos. I'm not saying that at all.
Please don't.
Yeah, please don't. I like what I do. But I think that the motivation behind it just needs to be a little different, and just stop with the entertainment.
Yeah. Well, and I think ultimately with something like, we talk about this like idea of to be entertaining and to lose the entertainment, and to feel like, well, to be like you said, there's so much of what the term entertaining is, I feel like, is nebulous, because again, there are plenty of people that find some things entertaining and some things boring. And like, again, but like agree baseline on what entertaining is, I think you're completely right. And man, it hurts the rest of us to have people like that in the industry, but it does allow us to go, see, that's what we're not trying to do. Like, at least it can also serve as kind of an interesting counterpoint, because you can yourself, I mean, obviously with your YouTube channel, watch my YouTube channel and you can see what I'm doing clear as day. And it's like, you don't even, I mean, like, yes, you have to explain it, but it, like, your stuff is so stylistically interesting and diverse from good old, other mainstreamers stuff. It should be apparent to viewers of your stuff, the quality and the care that's being put into it. Because that's just not happening most of the time anymore, anywhere for the most part with this kind of stuff. At least the big stuff is just like all samey, with just different people. I mean,
the honesty is definitely there. It's just, unfortunately, a lot of them don't get the recognition that they deserve with it. Like I can think of 5 people right now that are crushing it, both with either presenting content, whether that be through video or audio or, short form content, writing, whatever the case may be. And they're incredibly talented people that deserve to have a platform and deserve to, get their message of life after death, or how they interpret it out there. It's just, people either aren't looking for it, or the people that are creating it don't put themselves out there enough. They don't go the extra mile to, I guess, expose themselves to the world, in the sense that, like, you could be shot down for what you're doing. You could get a ton of backlash, and people are super afraid of that. And you can't be. Like, you'll find your people either way. There's a lot of people walking around, and people can be hateful and critical and rude, but they can also be very kind and accepting and understanding. And that's what you want to look for. You don't want to focus so much on the negative side of what may or may not happen if you're creating content. Just focus on why you're doing it and why it makes you happy, and be honest and genuine, and you will attract enough people that will build a community, and then it'll spread out from there. And then it just really starts to become like word of mouth, because like it'll keep, your name will keep coming up. And I think that like doing that and doing it with that intention will sort of spread throughout the content creator community over time, at least with the paranormal stuff. Because let's be real, everybody's trying to make ghost hunting videos and podcasts and blogs and things like that, but it's a small community. Like it really is. If you look at the people creating content consistently, between all of us, you, me, Josh, everybody, it's relatively small. It's not that big. It's just a lot of people consume the content.
Right.
The ratio of creation to consumption is like wild.
Oh yeah, which is why so many of us have to put out so much content all the time. Which is why you're surprised that people in your community aren't all over you for not, but that's a good thing.
Well, yeah, I always assumed like bigger numbers. It's like, oh, added pressure, got to get this out.
I'm with you. Yeah, it's
and
like
a week goes by and I'm like, oh no, I don't have this video out. And
where are you?
And nobody's upset about it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'd like, but I just always assume like bigger numbers is always like added pressure. So it's nice for it to not be.
Right. I mean, again, like that also means I think you've cultivated a community of like-minded people similar to yourself, because you wouldn't treat a content creator that way.
No, I wouldn't treat anybody that way, but especially content creators.
But it's easy to treat people on the internet that way. They're nameless. I'm nameless and faceless, and you're not. So, that's the way it works, right? I mean, I get it. I don't bully people on the internet, but I understand
No, I know.
I understand the conceit of bullying someone on the internet.
Yeah, you gotta have thick skin with this stuff too.
Yeah,
you just look at comments. You're like, cool.
Yeah, all right. Fine.
All right, cool.
I put myself out there and I deserve it, I guess, but I don't care. Like
somebody's going to have something to say, but just keep on keeping on. Yeah. Do what you do and do it honestly. Like don't let the influence of money and power and recognition influence what you do in this space, because it's a very sensitive topic, and people, I think everybody to some extent should look into it, even just a little bit, even if it's just a glimpse. Just look into your own mortality and the frailty of your existence, and why life after death fascinates you, even if it's just a subconscious thing, even if it's something that occasionally it'll linger in the back of our minds and occasionally come forward. And then we have that little moment of existential dread. Everybody's experienced it at some point. We call them quarter life and midlife crisis. But just respect it for what it is, and don't I just don't think people should have nefarious intentions with it, because it's such a sensitive topic.
Well, and for the rest of us who are being genuine, it doesn't feel good when we get lumped in and we get associated with, and we have to fight and claw and bite to make sure we're not lumped in, because it's easy to just go all of them. And it's like, not
they all do it. No,
not all of us. No. So Mike, where can people find Charm City Paranormal on the internet? Where are people going to go to find all the content that we just spent the last hour and a half talking about you make? You
can go to charmcityparanormal.com. It has all of my links on one page, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, everything. All
the places you would be finding content right now on the internet, essentially.
Pretty much, yep.
More or less. As for me, you can find me at weirdingwaymedia.com, which is the podcast network that we've created to house all the things that we work on, me being all the other people that aren't, me, doing podcasting. As for this show, scarystorieswetell.com, Scary Stories WT on all social media. As for the show, big thanks as always to Maggie the Odd and Dustin Rutledge for the album artwork, and to Alex Malnack of Blondo for the music. And biggest thanks of all to you, Mike, because you took time out of your busy schedules to sit down and join me, and it's been 4 months. So we must be busy. We all are so busy.
Yeah, man. And thank you for having me. It's always good talking to you, man.
Likewise, my friend. And I, next time we chat, I'm sure we'll be, who knows, farther down the road and making more crazy, wild, and genuine content. So I'm looking forward to it.
Likewise.
And we'll, as always, let our good friend, the former host of Tim, the former host of Sightings, Mr. Tim White, lead us out.
No mystery is closed to an open mind.